total estimated government revenue for 2022-2023 financial year is $2.939 billion. The total expenditure is $3.812 billion. What is your plan for revenue? Where are you expecting to get increased revenue?
Yeah, like I said, Vijay, the approach that the People's Alliance has taken is a very conservative approach in the first year. And that's premised on the fact that we really don't know what awaits us in government. So to fund our proposals, as per our manifesto, we've done two things. We've introduced an increase in corporate tax by 5%, but the bulk of our funding comes from a reallocation of the current budget. That is not new to government. That is something that is currently done. And what we've done through that exercise is identified about 290 million worth of reallocations that can be done based on government expenditure.
Where will you be shifting?
We're looking at critical areas. So funding of the USP debt. We're looking at funding of plans in health. We're looking at expanding investment into agriculture, rural development, putting aside money for women's rights issues, sexual discrimination, looking at more MSME funding for youth and women. We need to continue to activate that. So we basically reallocated funding because it's very critical for the country to understand is that we are not in a position to make major promises. That's coming from the People's Alliance. We need to be careful with what we promise. I think we are doing that in our manifesto. Once we get in, and then we'll have a fuller understanding of what is there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Narumbe. Question on where are you expecting to get increased revenue?
We are not going to touch revenue. I don't think it's the time to be touching revenue. You don't want to increase revenue when the economy is down. You want to increase spending in the economy. So we're not touching revenue. We are touching expenses because that is where the levers are.
So no new taxes, no new duties?
No new duties.
No reductions?
Yeah. So what we will do on revenue front, we will redistribute taxes away from the poor to the rich. So it's a redistribution that we are on, not so much an increase. So on the net impact, it's the same. So we are reducing income taxes for the poor, the lower income, and taking and increasing taxes to the super rich. And that's what we're doing. So we're not touching taxes. This is not the right time to be touching taxes as now.
We'll talk about personal income tax. That's a separate issue altogether. Mr. Naidu.
So Vijay, I want to pick up points made by both of the preceding speakers. I think Manoa is right. We don't actually know what's in there. We don't have enough information. A lot of government finances are opaque. They're not transparent. The information has not been shared. So in terms of how much revenue ought to be raised, how much expenditure ought to be cut, we've got to get in there, open the books, share the problems with the public, and then look at what we're going to do. I think what Mr. Narumbe said is right. It's not a good time to be raising revenue when the economy is still on its knees. It's looking critically at expenditure that's important. Zero-based budgeting is important. We don't simply look at what we spent last year and add 5%. We go right back to the bottom and we start again. Is every item of expenditure in this department or that ministry necessary? You've got to look critically at the budget, the expenditure, the way it's all spent, the structure of the department, and say, why are we spending? 10 million here? Why are we spending 20 million there? I mean, we look at your rivals at FBC, who seem to get an awful lot of money for so-called public broadcasting. Walesi, it seems to me, is a complete overspending disaster. You know, there's a whole lot of things that we have to look at in each ministry and not simply say we're going to tweak this or tweak that. We've got to restructure and look critically at the way everything is spent.
Mr. Chaudhry.
I think some steps need to be taken to enhance government revenue. If you're talking about debt reduction, then you have to do that. And tax reforms are necessary. Government needs revenue to provide services. And it is quite fair to raise taxes without hurting the poor. To those who have the ability to pay tax should pay fair tax. So what we propose to do in our budget, we are providing for a revenue of 3.181 billion against expenditure of 3.986 billion, with estimated net deficit of 804 million, which is 6.5% of the GDP. Now that's what we propose to do. Now, how do we raise this revenue? I think we want to start looking at it right from the beginning. We can't say we'll do this later or what. We must have a plan, which we must put into action as we go. And what we propose to do is to introduce a progressive income tax structure while continuing the $30,000 tax threshold, maintaining it. So people earning below 30,000 will pay no tax. Now, review tax holidays and incentives to create a level playing field. At the moment, we have a lot of concessions, tax concessions and incentives. And international financial institutions have been advising the government for some years now that we are giving away too much. We're giving away too much. So we will need to create a level playing field. You can't have tax holidays for 13 years, again 20 years, extend them, keep extending it, because it's not fair on the people who are paying their taxes. So we intend to standardize corporate tax at 20%, increase trade tax on non-essential imports. I think that's very important because non-essential imports cost us quite a bit in terms of outflow of foreign currency. So we've got to discourage non-essential imports. And we will reinstate service turnover tax to redress the imbalance between the services and other sectors of the economy. And finally, widen capital gains tax on sale and transfer of investment assets. There are a lot of exemptions in the capital gains tax, which I think need to be attended to. We'll ensure that no VAT on basic food items, including baby food and medicines, and we will not increase VAT rate.
And these tax changes will happen when, if you do come into government, you will bring these tax changes in the new year?
Yes, we consider that these reforms are necessary. One of the reasons why we are, we have so much deficit, we are borrowing so much, is because we are not, we don't have a level playing field with regard to revenue. We're giving away too much in concessions and in incentives, and we have a what shall I say? We make too many concessions.
I think you made your point about concessions and government losing revenue.